When I was growing up, interracial relationships was, I would say it was looked down upon a lot more in both races, Hispanic, Asian, black, white. Now it's a lot more accepted, I think, among pretty much all of them. There's still some outliers out there, but for the most part, people are a lot more accepting.
Well, I grew up in a pretty small town, Espille. So I didn't really, growing up, I didn't agree with it.
Well, they just didn't do it. And for instance, when I was in church, I remember a couple being together that I heard my grandparents and my dad talking about that they shouldn't be together. And in my mind, I just couldn't understand why. I thought, well, they like each other, why can't they be together? And so they just didn't do it 30 years ago, and it's changed a lot today.
So you want to know how were interracial relationships viewed by society when I was growing up? When I was growing up, where I lived down in South Texas, I had friends and family that were interracially married, and it was not common, but it's just part of life, you know, where I was. I remember seeing on the news that there was, you know, places, you know, in the South. When I say the South, I'm thinking like, Louisiana, Alabama, places like that, that it wasn't as accepted. You'd hear about people getting hurt or threatened or something like that. So I think society, you know, as a whole probably didn't accept it, but where I grew up, it was more accepted, or not common, but it was okay, and nobody frowned upon it, at least in my, you know, in my world, where I grew up in South Texas.
When I was young, I didn't have a problem. It didn't bother me if other people dated in other races, but I personally didn't really want to.
I really didn't think much of it. It wasn't a big deal to me. I didn't look down upon anybody. I had friends and family that were, you know, Mexican married to black people, Mexican married to white people, married to Filipinos, and I think a Chinese person, if I remember right, way a long time ago. So it didn't bother me at all. I just kind of grew up as something, it was just sort of normal. And we also had friends that were interracially married, and so it was just kind of common, I guess. So I really didn't have any feelings about it one way or the other. I mean, I didn't think down on anybody, think bad about them. I just thought, well, it's just they loved one another, so they got married, or they were together, or so. To me, it wasn't a big deal.
I mean, I believe it's a great thing in this society, you know, having a change. I mean, I grew up with a bunch of black friends as best friends, and they all have white girlfriends, so I'm all for it.
Things have totally changed since then, just from growing up and times of life.
As a young adult, I never viewed interracial relationships as being wrong.
My views on interracial marriage, I feel like everybody should have interracial marriage, because I, for one, want to get married to a black lady, because I just feel like they're...
I have no problem with it. You can't pick the one that you love, or like you can't determine who you love by race. You know, if you fall in love with a person of a different race, then that's who you choose to be with. So be it.
It's fine to date people that are purple.
I remember when I was smaller, it wasn't that predominant as it is today. I knew people that were, you know, interracially married in my own family and friends of my parents. Where I grew up, it was, you know, it wasn't real common, but it was, you know, there and fairly accepted. I remember seeing on the news, though, you know, that there was problems, you know, in the north or the South, and people getting hurt or just threatened or whatever the case may be because they were married, to one another or even dating. So, but it's changed today. From what I see now, it's more common, and you see, more interracially mixed couples everywhere you look, and I don't think people look down on it like they used to. It's just part of everyday life now.
They weren't accepted near as much as they are today.
I would say the interracial marriages and relationships have changed quite a bit over the past 30 years. And back when I was a kid, there were a lot more parents of, my parents' generation who were very against that. Now I think it's a lot less.
30 years ago, it wasn't accepted at all. And today, it's just the norm. It's normal to see people together.
So, I think it's funny that you even asked me a question about an interracial relationship, because I don't necessarily think that way, or it's not really an issue for me at all. It was an issue for me growing up. I wasn't afraid to talk about my relationship with my parents. They raised me to be the person, and they were happy as long as I was happy, and as long as the man treated me the way I should be treated. My grandparents might have had an issue, I guess, but they weren't alive by the time that I was engaged, and so my parents were happy as long as I was happy, and I don't think anybody had an issue. Nobody in my family had an issue. My friends were all really excited for me. So I think it's funny that we even talk about things as an interracial relationship, or the people are the same race in a relationship, because I think it's just about the person and not about. Hey Kenzie, what color is Daddy?
Regular.
Regular. What color is Mom?
Regular.
Regular. And what color are you?
Regular.
We're just all regular.